Okay, good morning, everyone. I will call to order the meeting of the Western Municipal Water District Board of Directors. Tammy, would you begin with a roll call for us, please?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Director Torres. Director Dinstead.
Good morning, I'm present.
Good morning. Director Roten.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Rizvi.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning. President Gardner.
I am here as well, and Director Torres is walking in.
Thank you very much. You do have a quorum today.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to public comments, let me say two things. First, as certainly all of you who are wearing pink are aware, and probably everyone else, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's important particularly to me because my wife is a 20-plus year survivor. I'm sure with the number of people who work for Western, we have survivors here as well and family members. So early detection is really a key. That's why Joyce did as well as she did. The other is, again, as probably everybody is aware, at 11:20 there is a national test of the emergency broadcast, and everybody's cell phones will go nuts, so please make sure they are quiet. I don't think it will override being muted, but we'll find out. It may. So if everybody's phone goes nuts at 11:20, don't worry. So, and with that, Tammy, do we have any public comments?
Director Gardner, if we could
Yes.
do the Pledge of Allegiance
Yes, we
first.
should do that first.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Stephanie. Stephanie Mariko is with us to do the pledge. Stephanie, you want to tell us a little about you?
Yes, my name is Stephanie Mariko. I've been with Western Water for over a year now, and I'm the newest member, sorry, I'm a little nervous, administrative assistant for the executive management team.
Welcome, we are glad to have you.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing this.
Welcome. Thank you. Please join me. Ready, begin.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. Now, do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay. See, that was easy. We are going next to a presentation on Sites Reservoir. Mr. Miller?
We are. We have a very esteemed guest with
Yes,
us
we do.
today. We've been talking with Jerry for some time about the Sites Reservoir. This is one of the big projects in the state of California to benefit the entire state. You've heard me talk about Solve the Water Crisis and California Water for All many times here, and these are the types of solutions that we're advocating for. And so really appreciate Jerry taking time out of your busy day, but this is a great opportunity to give our board more information about the project. Several of us has been up there in the Met tours to look at the site and see it, so it's great to have you come down and explain it to those people here that haven't been able to do that. So Jerry, thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Craig, appreciate it. Mr. President, members of the board, staff, members of the public, very happy today to be here with you and give you an update on this project. While the project is occurring in the northern part of our state, it is intended to serve all of our state collectively, and in that way, as Craig mentioned, it's a very important project for all of us that we just need to get this done. It's been a long time in the making. The number one question I get asked is why is it taking so long? And that is because this has been on the books for over 60 years, and it has taken a long time, but it does take a long time for things like this to actually get accomplished, and that's important. There's good reasons for it, and I think we're at a point now where it needs to be done, and we are moving forward, and I'm happy to be here today to give you a progress update on where we are. Thank you to several of you that were able to come up to the site and actually go out to the Sites Valley and observe what's out there and how things are in the local region. I think that's very important. Director Ruffton mentioned to us when we did an aqua briefing a few months ago, how important it is that we get out and talk about this project in Southern California. And so really pleased that you're giving me the opportunity to do that today. The second most asked question I get is, what if we had Sites Reservoir? You know, we just had a big winter, an epic winter in some parts of the state, and Sites would have been able to help us capture and store some of that water for our future dry times. 700,000 acre feet is the estimate, and what's shown here, it's a very busy graphic, but it's to represent that we are at a stage now where we've never before, where we actually can look at the actual operations and the flows and the weather patterns and identify the times at which we would be able to fill Sites Reservoir. And we have this simulation model that has now been created that helps us capture this in real time. And what this does is it helps those that are investing in the project to understand, you know, is this real? Are we really going to be able to capture water? Is this real water? Is this new water that we're going to be able to take advantage of? And you know, when you look at the 700,000 acre feet, it may not seem like all that much, but when you put it into the context of what we're carrying over in our reservoirs for these dry times, it is substantial. You see the comparisons with Shasta, Orville, and Folsom storage. This has substantial contributions to the amount of water that we will have available to us in the dry times in the future. The Sites Reservoir project is a local-led project, and this is very important from the perspective of the north-south matters related to water. It is the result, one of the reasons that it has taken so long is that the federal government and the state government were in charge for many of those years, and the local people did not like that. And it wasn't until they took charge in 2010 and formed this Joint Powers Authority that they actually started to get behind the project and local support grew. And you know as well as anybody that you have to have local support for something like this to actually happen. So it is because of the leadership of these agencies and the folks involved that we've been able to get as far as we have. But it's really important to understand and realize that this is a local-led project that has statewide benefits. It's a project that is uniquely situated relative to other elements of our water management system in California. And it's a project that really is adaptable for the changing climate that we are seeing and that is going to continue to evolve. We have analyzed sites and determined that under any of the climate change scenarios that are out there today, anywhere from 0 to plus 15% is the improvement in the project as climate evolves and changes. And that's really important for us as a state, because we have to find ways to be able to manage water under these changing climate conditions, and having another resource like the Sites Reservoir helps us do that. Sites is 100% rain-fed. Sites is not dependent on snowpack, and that is largely why you see the improvement in the performance of the project with the changing climate. Many of you have already been up there, seen the site. It's a beautiful empty valley, currently used for mostly cattle grazing. Spans about 13 miles long and about 3.5 miles wide in total. Very important point here, these two canals, these two blue lines that run up and down the map here, those are existing canals that we're relying on for the conveyance of water in and out of the reservoir. Without those canals, we would not be a cost-effective project. So very critical to rely on the existing infrastructure as part of the facilities. We have many participants, 22, that are all participating financially in the project. No one yet has actually made a firm final commitment in the project, and that is important because we're still studying and evaluating the project. But that point is coming very soon, probably within the next 2 years. Metropolitan Water District, of course, is on that list as a participant at this time. And we have a waiting list. Right now, that stands at 13 participants, including yourselves. Thank you very much for your expression of interest in the project. That's been very important for not only the participants to know that this is a project of interest, but also statewide to highlight and allow other policymakers to see the need that is out there, the unmet need that has to be accommodated, which the Solve the Water Crisis Coalition is bringing forward in a very meaningful way. I wanted to focus a lot of my attention on the Metropolitan participation, since you are a member agency of Metropolitan. So you see here each of the participants' quantities and amounts of the project in terms of their storage in the reservoir, but also the state and federal government. While they're not the lead of the project, they are an important participant, each one of them. And together, in this scenario, they total a little over 25%. Depending on Reclamation's final participation and some of the others that are CVP contractors here, you could see that go up to almost a third of the reservoir. And primarily the benefit that the state and federal government are investing in is for environmental purposes. We can't leave the environment behind. When climate changes, it affects the environmental flows, and we have to build projects that accommodate for those needs as well as for people and farms. I always like to say it's important, if you're going to spend $4.5 billion on something, that you know what you get. And so this is meant to describe that. There's two things you get when you invest at sites. You get a share of the storage space, so you get your own little condo in the condo complex. And you get a proportional share of any water that we're able to divert. And generally speaking, we're expecting about an average annual of about 300,000 acre feet. So when you look at somebody like Metropolitan and you say, okay, they got 22% of the storage. So looking at 700,000 acre feet this year, 22% of the storage using those guarantees, they would have been able to put 155,000 acre feet of water into their 300,000 acre feet of storage space. That's for them to decide. So that's how each individual agency kind of gets to manage their own piece of the reservoir and have local control. They could also forego their water if that's what they choose. I doubt they would do that, but they could do that, and someone else would be able to put that in their empty storage space. They could lease space for someone else. So what this co-op system creates is a way to exchange within the reservoir, and it makes for ease of movement of water across the state. And because the project serves all parts of the state, it helps the state better manage the water resource. And then the last thing I would just mention in terms of the waiting list is that as a waiting list participant, what we're trying to establish is that in that position, you are somehow given some priority over others in terms of your ability to receive transfers out of the reservoir. If we're not able to accommodate you within the context of being a full participant, we want to try to recognize the support and the contribution that you've made by giving you these kind of first rights of refusal to the transfers. And that's what the plan is as we go forward. Funding is a very important part of any project. We are in a position where we have a majority of our funding fairly well lined up. A large part of the local participant funding comes through what is the WIFIA loan that we were awarded by EPA last year for a little over $2.2 billion. That's 49% of the project costs, and we're very thankful for EPA's recognition of the importance of this project. The state is coming from Prop 1. Voters of the state in 2014 approved Prop 1 to include $2.7 billion. Sites is the largest recipient of that amount, and that again is mostly for ecosystems, but also for recreation and flood control. And then the WIN Act, the federal contribution, and we're accumulating funds there. A 9%, or I'm sorry, a 16% contribution is what Reclamation has said they want. Right now, we only have room for 9, but they continue to accumulate the funds to get to 16. So all together with all those sources, we have the funding all lined up and ready to move forward. Reminder, a WIFIA loan is a loan, not a grant. So all that money will have to be paid back by the individual participants. I don't mean to get into your business, but I want to share this because I think cost effectiveness is important for this project to move forward. Affordability is critically important for our participants. And this is intended to illustrate the affordability of the project from a metropolitan perspective. Generally speaking, out of the reservoir, it's about $850 an acre foot on a unit cost basis. Estimate $450 to get it down here into the Met system. So total, all into the Met system is $1,300 an acre foot is the current estimate. And when you look at some of these other opportunities that are out there for water supplies, it is very competitive relative to these other opportunities. And I would also point out that it is substantial in terms of the amount of water that it generates compared to these other opportunities as well. Just want to give you a real quick update on a few areas. Environmental planning and permitting. We are culminating a 6-year process, hopefully next month, to finalize and certify our EIR-EIS. That has been a very useful process for us, I think, because we've seen the project evolve and change to be something that is not only affordable but also permittable, and no project in California can get built without permits. The water right is a very critical element of our project. We are currently in the application and review process with the State Board. You might have heard we just closed the protest period, and I wanted to share, I'm trying to go to the next slide, but I'm not going. I wanted to share, if you could help me, thank you very much, appreciate that, Justin. This is the list of protestants. I think this is important for you to highlight, and the reason I list them all out here is so that you can see the names of those that are involved, and we've categorized these into 3 categories. 2 that you'll notice are missing specifically. DWR, importantly, they're one of the largest water right holders in the state, so not having them protest your application for a water right is significant. And number 2, the crossed out one, Bureau of Reclamation, they are also a large holder of water rights in California. And while they submitted a letter, their letter has been determined to be a substantive comment and not a protest of the project. So we were able to get through this protest period without 2 of the largest water right holders in the state of California protesting our water right. That is a substantial favorable outcome, I would say, for the project. Others of these, I would say generally they're more concerned about the general aspects of taking water out of natural flow and also effects in the Delta, which we feel we have addressed, but they have some concerns that continue. And while we've been working with all of these folks for the last 6 years in our environmental process, and I mean literally having workshops and discussions about everything that we're doing, there's still some concerns that are felt to raise to a level of the State Board intervention. And so likely we're not going to reach resolution with many of these. We will try and do what we can, but it's not likely. And so ultimately it's going to come down to the State Board making a decision, and that decision will determine whether this project moves forward or not, largely in my opinion. On the engineering side, we've been making good progress in the field. We have geotechnical evaluations going on, learning more about what's below the surface so that we can get a better cost estimate for the project. We've also determined there to be some pretty large construction packages, and so we're starting to work towards putting together the plans and specs and everything else that goes with actually building something like this. On the real estate side, we are on the cusp of making our first land acquisition. I would say. But all of the landowners have been very willing and accommodating to our field work needs, and so all that has occurred through temporary rights of entry. And generally speaking, there's about 30 landowners in the valley, and I would say probably 90% of those are supportive or neutral on the project. The other 3 are not so supportive, but also are very fatigued about this back and forth. Are we going to do this? Is somebody going to take my property? Just get it over with kind of thing. And we're working through those issues with those folks. On the schedule, this is my last slide. On the schedule, I mentioned 2 years from now, people got to make a decision. That's after we get the water right and a couple of key permits. At that juncture, then, all of the 22 agencies in the state and federal government will make their final commitments. Everything will kind of settle out as to where everybody lands in terms of their participation. And then we'll break ground and move forward through construction, which we estimate to take about 7 years, and completing in 2033. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Do board members have questions? Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Sorry. You mentioned when it had the protest slide that DWR did not protest, which was great. What was the second agency that you mentioned that sent something in, but it ended up being more of a comment letter?
Bureau of Reclamation.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
They operate this Central Valley project.
Okay, Bureau of Rec. And I think I know what you're going to say, but the waiting list, is that because there just isn't enough capacity for all the people that want to draw from there?
Yes.
Okay, so they're
Yes.
on the waiting list in hopes that maybe someone will drop out and
Yes.
they might get it. Okay.
Yes.
And-
And I'm trying to say also, you know, they have a role to play here. They are playing a role. You all are playing a role in helping to implement this project by being on the waiting list. You're showing your support. You're showing that you have a need. That is an important role to play in this project. I say that should be rewarded to some extent. So I'm talking to the board about this first right of refusal idea.
Okay, I like that. And I probably know the answer to this too, but was there a way to make it bigger? It
Yeah.
just seems like, you know, I know you have all these obstacles, but once the project goes through all of this years of process, it just seems like, are we all gonna go, man, we should have made that half again its size?
Maybe, yes, that might happen. I would say probably in 20 or 30 years. I've never seen a water project yet that didn't wish it could have been bigger or more than it actually was.
Yeah.
But I will say that back in 1957, when this was first introduced as part of the Bulletin Number 3 of the California Water Plan, it was 5.2 million acre feet in size. Now we're at 1.5 million acre feet in size.
Okay.
Over the years, it has been downsized. In fact, when I mentioned the EIR that we started 6 years ago, it was 1.8 million acre feet. So since in this 6-year period, we've downsized. Why have we done that? We have to be affordable. So that's important in terms of sizing, and we have to be permittable. That's important in terms of sizing too, because if you can't safely and protectively capture the water out of the river in a manner that allows you to use all that storage, you're overbuilding for unnecessarily. We've reached a good balance point at this stage where we have an affordable project and we have a permittable project. And that's kind of the sweet spot that I think any project kind of gets to when it goes through all this.
Sure.
And it's not really a function of trying to build it as big as we possibly can. It's a function of what can we afford and what can we get permitted.
Permit, okay. So the 700,000 acre feet that you mentioned in the beginning, was that what you would have expected to be able to put in there this past year? Is that what that number was?
Exactly.
But it actually will hold more than that?
That's about half the reservoir size. So
Okay.
we would have been able
Okay.
to fill about half the reservoir. And our modeling shows that there are even some years that have occurred in the past 82 that we'd be able to fill the entire reservoir in 1 year. So
Okay. I was thinking, when I first heard it, I was thinking that was the max capacity, but I'm glad to hear there actually is more space there, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And thank you so much for coming today and
Sure.
talking to us about this and answering our questions. And, you know, I follow a lot of water pages on Facebook, and, you know, people say, well, what about sites? How come it's not built yet? And it's like, there's so much story behind that question. So this is really important, and people will be able to, you know, watch our broadcast of this and get more information. So thank you very much.
Appreciate the opportunity. Your suggestion 6 months ago brought this on, so thank you for that.
Oh, nice. I'm glad. Yeah, I think people in Southern California, they may have heard the name sites, but they don't really know where it is or what it will do. And I didn't realize today that it's all rain feds until today. So, you know, I learned, every time I hear an update, I learn something new about it. So that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Jerry, I have one question on the waiting list. Is that organized in order of your turn to be a participant? The slide that you showed?
The slide I showed is alphabetical, I think.
Okay,
There is some priority to things, although we haven't yet worked that all out exactly. But even in the creation of it, there were kind of points in time where we were setting markers, and so there is some priority to it, I would say.
okay, great, thank you. And hopefully we're higher than we are alphabetically.
Yeah.
Or we can change our name.
Right? Question? Yes. Jerry, thanks so much for coming. Certainly appreciate it. I've been to the site several times now. And we'll continue to take state project tours when I get awarded those from Metropolitan, and I'm able to take a group up there, because I think it's critical that people understand, especially from our area, what this actually means to water infrastructure and what it means to Southern California moving forward in the future. So I think it's really, really important. I am going to suggest and drop a line to the chairman of the board for Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Don Ortega, that you come and do this presentation at the board for Metropolitan. I think it's really important that all of the board understands what the commitment is and what Met's obligation has been to this point and what we look forward to. When I look at $1,300 an acre foot on the estimate versus what some of the pure water projects have turned out for a lot less water, it's a no-brainer for me. And financially, it is the definite way to go when you're looking at $3,000 an acre foot off of pure water that's only going to produce this much amount, and then you're looking at, that's all a recycled project. So when we're asking people to conserve, there's going to be less and less and less to be able to put in those pure water sites. So that is of a concern. You know, rainfall, we have an anticipation, at least at some point throughout the year, especially in Northern California, which is where most of the state receives its rainfall, to have some type of commitment, reliability, and whatnot up there. So I'm gonna throw the idea out there. We'll see if it gets any kind of attention on it. But I think it's really important that we have the conversation. And I hope you're ready, willing, and able to come down for that.
I'd be happy to, yeah. I mean, Metropolitan has been an important contributor to the project, both in terms of their financial contribution, but also their knowledge and history with building big projects. I mean, Diamond Valley is the last large state water storage reservoir that's been built in California. So we are capitalizing on that knowledge and capabilities as part of the project. So they're making contributions beyond just the financial part of it. It's a very interesting project from a local level, because here you look at $1,300 an acre foot and it's very competitive. There, you look at $850 an acre foot and you cringe, because they do enjoy fairly low-cost water. But we need both. We need the local agency participation and affordability to maintain local support, we need Southern California participation for its support, but also the financial backing of the project. And so it's an interesting kind of combination of agencies coming together, and really it's helping all of us to bridge this north-south gap, I think, in ways that we have not been able to accomplish to date. And it's because we have a project that we've already built on a state and federal level for the entire state, the San Luis Reservoir Project, but we have never had a local-led project led by the local water agencies coming together in this way. And I think it's helping to form a pathway for us to better manage our water as a total state as opposed to a north-south.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, but thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and look forward to taking the next tour up there with you guys.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Not, thank you very much, Jerry, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are.
Our next item is the consent calendar, which consists solely of the minutes from a prior meeting.
Move to approve?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Amy, did we receive public comment on this?
We did not.
Okay. Would you please call the roll?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dennstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
Director Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Do we have anything to add to the agenda?
Nothing to add today.
Okay, brings us to our action items. Our first two are money. We like money.
All right, Melissa Matlock is here to get permission to go out and try and bring in some more money for projects. So the first one is an application to the Bureau of Rec for the resiliency program. Melissa?
Yes, good morning, everyone. So again, this is for an application to apply for funding. Hopefully, we'll come back and be able to say that we got it. But this is for the drought resiliency program. We're applying for up to $5 million for a storage tank along the Arlington to Salter pipeline that will benefit the wholesale enterprise, so the communities of Norco, Jurupa, Corona, and Riverside. The application is due at the end of October, requires a board resolution to apply. And I also really want to give a big thanks to the real collaboration that's gone into this application. This is a big construction project to build this storage tank. So, you know, there's been some modeling effort that's gone into it. So really want to thank operations and engineering for their expertise in this application and their review of it, as well as the Ferguson Group, our federal advocates, for they review our applications and provide guidance and feedback. So really want to thank everyone's involvement and collaboration. We have been really successful, and it's because of this collaborative effort. So just want to say thank you to everyone, and I'm open to questions.
Okay, just for clarity, in case anybody doesn't have access to the staff report, while it is located physically adjacent to the
Arlington.
the brine line, it is not storing brine line water, it's storing potable water.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. And if you quiz the operators and the water resources groups, there's nothing better in a water system than having storage. And that system is very short of storage. We're relying on storage within agencies' systems, and they're short of storage. So this would really be good to our ability to operate the system more smoothly.
great, thank you.
Move to approve getting more money.
Second, getting more money.
Yeah, we have faith that you're going to pull this off. Any discussion on this item? If not, Tammy, would you please do a roll call vote?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dennstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Happily, yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Great, thank you. Melissa?
All
you
right,
have
yeah,
another-
8B is going through the Bureau of Rec again. There's a lot of opportunities, and so we're pursuing as many as feasible and practical for us. So Melissa, give us the details on this one, please.
Yes, absolutely. So this is for a planning and project design grant. So that's pretty rare, actually. So we're really excited that they're actually providing money for design. So we're applying for design of a Well 6 project, again benefiting the same Arlington to Salter pipeline and communities of Norco, Rupa, Corona, and Riverside. All of these agencies have signed on letters of support for this project. Really, benefiting what we want to hope to accomplish with this. One of the benefits of going after design grant is if you get the design funds, you're almost a shoo-in to get construction funds for it. So we're really setting ourselves up in the long run for future funding for this project. The application is due October 17th. It does require a board resolution. And again, we've come out here, this is our fourth one, kind of this in the last 30 days of resolutions. So really want to thank all of the collaboration and reviewing that's been going on, because this has been quite a lot. Again, trying to make sure that we're staying feasible with what we're applying for, but also making sure that we are taking advantage of these great opportunities that are coming. So I'm available for any questions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, Tammy, would you please do a roll call vote?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstedt?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
And you're still up, Craig.
The board's been passing emergency declarations on consent as we've worked our way through this project. And today, Derek actually has kind of a status update and a presentation on what's going on. So Derek?
Great. If I could just put this on full screen, please. Yeah. Great, thank you. So what I wanted to do was go through the project, describing what we've come up with as a solution for repairing the pipeline. It's a little bit detailed, and then I'm going to go through some photos showing what the site looks like, what the pipeline looks like, and then I'll talk about some of the challenges that we've been overcoming, especially some very recently, and I'll go over the project schedule. So this is that detailed slide. It's an excerpt of some of the plans that we put together for basically addressing the fact that the pipeline has been undermined by a distance of about 135 feet. That is a really long length for a pipe to go unsupported, and the reason why it's going unsupported is that the creek has decided to flow along the trench. So if you look in light blue here on the drawing, hopefully you can see my arrow moving. This is where the creek is going, and so the pipe's about 80 years old, and over the years it said, hey, this is a great spot to go. It's got less, it's easier to excavate, and so that's why the stream wants to go there. That creates a lot of challenges for doing the repair. When you have a creek that's going right along the pipe, it's very different from the repair that we did at the Mills gravity line. That one, the Mills gravity line was crossing roughly perpendicular to the creek, and it was actually possible to make it so that the creek could pass over the Mills gravity line. In this case, the creek is under the pipeline, so it makes it very hard to put the pipe back in the same spot. What that means is that we had to come up with a unique way of addressing the problem of the creek, which is to move the creek. Now, we don't take that lightly because there's a lot of environmental concerns about doing that, and so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, how do we minimize the impacts of doing this? How are we going to justify this? And we put together an emergency permit to the Army Corps. For the Army Corps, went through, they reviewed it, and interestingly, at first they said, great, go ahead, go do it, right? On the part about some challenges we received, I'll talk about that in a little bit. So you can see the pipeline, it's right here. What we're going to do is we're going to replace that pipeline. It's 80 years old. Why leave that there? The problem is that there are no valves in the area. It's about...
Sorry, Derek. The
Yes.
pipeline is in dark blue, or it's the drawing
It's
across?
roughly here.
Okay,
You can see the fittings on the ends.
yeah, I see that now.
It's a straight
Okay.
line there. And the other lines that you see on there are the contour lines of how we're proposing to move things around. That's existing versus where we're going to move the creek. So the thing about the pipe is it's about 3.5 miles between valves. So that became a problem later. It was one of our challenges. And it also becomes a problem for doing a bypass. So what you have to do is do a line stop. So a line stop is that you do a cut in and you insert basically a device that expands and it stops the water from flowing. So it acts like a valve an Insta valve that you can insert. We're planning on doing that fairly shortly. I think on next Monday is when we're scheduled. And once we do that, we'll be able to put in a bypass line. We'll bypass it temporarily, and then we'll put in the new temporary line. We're also going to temporarily bypass the creek. We're going to put that into a temporary pipe, and then we're going to do all the construction. So we're going to basically move over the creek, and then we're going to have a space to put the pipe, reassemble the pipe, the new pipe, and then we're going to backfill everything and put in gabions. The gabions will prevent the creek from wanting to go right back to where it was.
Like retaining
So-
walls.
Right, exactly. That's the description of the project. Now, here is the site before we did any work. You can see it's fairly overgrown, and it went on like that for some time because you just couldn't see anything until we had some storms. It kind of moved aside some of the bushes, washed them out, and we're like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? So we see that, and as we started to measure things and see it was 135 feet undermined, we were very worried. That's what caused us to say, hey, we really have to do something about this. This could break any second now. So this is us removing the vegetation around there. Again, we got a permit for doing this, all of this work under the emergency permit with the Army Corps. And you can see the pipe where it is undermined. It's just not supported at all. So this is another photo of it. You can see we've grabbed the other side. That's where we're going to move the creek over to. And you can see them putting up some basically filter fabric for allowing the creek to move through without doing an erosion as we're moving around, materials. You can see here we put some pipe supports below the pipe. We're like, hey, let's support this now so nothing happens. And let's see, and then I'm going to go into the project schedule in a second. I want to talk about some of the challenges that we've had. So one of the first challenges was, you can see this whole area is a nice riparian habitat. Look at that, it's got all this stuff growing. They went in there to remove it, and they were immediately attacked by bees. So there was a beehive in there, and one of the workers got stung about 20 times, and he's better now. But that was a challenge. And the thing is that we put this there. You can see we put the supports in right away. And over this last weekend, what happened was the thing sprung a leak. It was a slight leak, about 15 gallons per minute, but that's a precursor to, oh my goodness, that's a lot of flow. So we immediately put in a repair band. And a repair band basically is like a little rubber clamp that you put on there and you just cinch it down. Now, it only reduced it to about 1 or 2 gallons per minute. It's very temporary. It's like a Band-Aid. And so we had to do an actual all-out repair. So we emptied the line to remove the pressure so we could weld on there. You have to chip away. You have to basically chip away the concrete coating, and you have to make a spot so you can weld on the actual repair. And during that time, of course, you can't have it under full pressure. So we had to empty out about 400,000 gallons of recycled water very slowly into the creek. Of course, we did notifications to the Regional Water Control Board, and we do have permits for emergency type repairs for that. And we dechlored it, and we let it out in a way that wouldn't cause erosion. So we put it in at the capacity of the creek. So it's a good thing that we were out here at the time when the thing finally did start to break, because if we hadn't, then a catastrophic break is uncontrolled and will cause a lot of erosion and will cause a lot of damage. And if you go downstream from here, there's homes that are right next to the creek, there's a whole bunch of other things. So it's very fortunate that we caught this when we did. And I'm happy to say that the pipeline, as of this morning, is back in service, and we're serving our customers. And we are going to be doing the line stop on Monday, according to schedule. So it looks like we're going to recover. You know, we'll see what happens over the next few days because of this little thing happening. And another aside, as far as challenges, the Army Corps, at the very end of last week, said, I don't know if this is an emergency. They did that on Friday. They were like, I'm looking at it, it looks like it's been there a while. I don't know if it qualifies for this permit. So we got busy, right? So we immediately got together, you know, a comment letter back, and we explained like the entire situation of why we think we need to hit this off before it becomes a problem, before it breaks. And they actually replied back on Monday, after it already leaked, and they don't know that, you know what, you're right, it's an emergency. So they actually did agree with us as far as our approach. And we did not have to say, well, you know, it actually did break. It started to break. So we do view this as an emergency type repair. So as far as the project schedule, we've been constructing the stream alignment, which includes that grubbing, all the grading that you've been seeing in September. We're putting in the temporary high line. We're in the midst of that right now. We're going to be removing the old pipe from October 16th through the 20th. We're going to install the new pipeline October 23rd through the 27th. And we're going to install the gabions on October 30th through November 6th, and then we'll complete the project in November 6th through the 15th. That's our current schedule. What I've heard is that we should still be on schedule. We were actually a little bit ahead of schedule before the leak, and that's the only reason why we can recover and keep the schedule. But that's essentially my update, and I'm opening this up to any questions.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions?
No, just very, very good job, and glad you were out there when you needed to be. That's just great job in keeping this all intact.
Do you need a motion to continue it?
Yeah, yes, we did.
So moved.
Second.
Great job, thank you.
We have no public comment?
We do not.
Okay. Would you please do a roll call vote?
Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, directors.
Thank you. Thanks, Derek. Brings us to reports. Mr. General Counsel,
I have no report, thank you.
Mr. General Manager.
I was hoping General Counsel have a longer report. I got a few different things I'd like to highlight. I had a really good meeting with Adele Hodge-Khalil, the general manager, met this week. So that was last week. Whew, weeks are flying by. Last week. Met is super busy. Lots of big issues going at Met. So just to highlight our discussion, we talked a lot about PFAS. You may ask, well, why is Met worried about PFAS? Because it's not really prevalent in surface water. But remember, they are working on a recycled water project, and it is prevalent in some recycled water systems. So we are on the same page with Met in trying to get a waiver from EPA, since the wastewater treatment plants didn't cause PFAS and don't put any PFAS in the system. So good to collaborate with them on that. Discussed quite a bit about the surplus water that's going to be left in Northern California this year that Met actually has a state water contract right to, and how do we work on projects and programs to alleviate that loss in the future. Talked a lot about Colorado River issues, and Adele is doing, in my opinion, a really good job of being engaged on the federal side with the Colorado River many groups, to try and negotiate solutions for Metropolitan and our fellow member agencies. A lot of talk about water water supply infrastructure investment in the future. And as you've heard through the camp process, this is a huge issue for the board to wrestle with, is where do we invest that money and how much money do we invest with? And then we talked a lot about the camp process itself and how do we move this, it's kind of this behemoth of decision-making at Metropolitan, and it is very, very difficult. So we talked a lot about that. Great meeting, really appreciated his time, and we had a very productive member agency managers meeting at the end of the week after that, where he's actually talking about some changes to some of the processes up at Met with the general managers. So that was all very encouraging, and happy to hear his leadership on those issues.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Did you say the camp process?
Yeah, climate.
California
It's the climate
Okay.
for
thank
water.
you.
for water.
So you'll see a 4W on the end, Camp 4W.
Thanks.
Item 2, this is Customer Service Week. And so we're excited about that. We have put so much time and effort into our customer service ethic and standards here at Western. And so we love that it's Customer Service Week, and we feel like we are right in the thick of things. And Sarah and her team, obviously on the external customer service, are knocking it out of the park. But one of the things I'm really proud of at Western that's changed is how we think about customer service internally. And we are serving each other and between groups. And I think Melissa actually brought up a really good point when we talk about grant funding. The customer service that we provide each other between water resources and ops and engineering and our grants team is pretty phenomenal. It's a lot of service going back and forth. So happy to be participating in that. Third thing is next week is Water Professionals Appreciation Week. So we are very excited about that also. Our staff is very proud about being water professionals. We're going to celebrate that next week. We feel like we have the best staff in the state. I feel that firmly and strongly. And we are professionals. And we're really proud of that here. And I see Candy hiding back there. And, we leverage that to try and bring on and grow our future water professionals. And so events like this are great advertising with kids that are in school and trying to figure out what they're going to do in their life. We had a really successful, I don't know what you call it, job fair. I want to say it's a recruiting fair. It's a job fair out at the Galleria last week, huge attendance. And it's all about finding future water professionals. And so I'm glad we're kind of leading the way on that.
Question.
Yes.
What are you doing for the Water Professionals Week for the staff?
Well, Grace is hard at work. I don't know, Sarah, do you want to give a brief update? Put you on the spot?
Sure, would be my pleasure. And anywhere I missed out, I'm sure Grace will bail me out a little bit. In addition to offering employees appreciation activities throughout the week, also including this week with Customer Service Week, we have some special items, I think breakfast burritos for our customer service team this morning. But more importantly, we really want our public and our customers to understand the level of skill and professionalism it takes to deliver reliable water, wastewater services 24/7. So we're going to be promoting those kind of behind the scene takes and what it looks like to really be a water professional all week and really all month, so that we're shining lights on the employees that help us carry out our mission, but also so customers can really be part of that story too.
So we, Grace and Micah put out a video and gave me an opportunity to thank our employees and appreciate our employees, so that went out yesterday. And then we're looking forward to some time on the 10th and 11th next week to spend some quality time in the morning with, first out here at Meridian, then at El Sobrante with our staff. So looking forward to that opportunity.
I think we should have the general manager pictures of him serving ice cream to all the employees.
Our CFO isn't a fan of ice cream. He's not a fan of fun, good point.
He's a money
I
professional.
need to bring up the ducky float.
So we will, we have a plan. We have a plan. The last thing I want to talk about is we highlighted this at length to the engineering committee. We are up in force talking to the state board today. We have Western has 3 different speakers because we need more than 3 minutes. So we're in line. This is talking about water use standards, and we are working with all of our water agencies. We've put out call to action for not just our service area within Western service area, but within the whole San Ana River watershed. So I'm reaching out to all the GMs to get them to participate. I'm also reaching out with community groups. I met with the chamber last night to talk about getting their support, and we will have their support in a letter writing campaign. So just want to make sure we are not in favor of these efficiency standards. This is going to come back on our board. The public is not going to be happy about this, and we're the ones that are going to hear about it. And so we are trying to make sure that we advocate for appropriate water conservation standards, which I think we already do. So anyway, that's the latest. So that, if there's no more questions on my comments, you can see Tony standing up. The last part of my presentation is we gave an update on our flare replacement program to the engineering committee, and Director Denstead asked that it come to the board. So Tony is here to give an update on the great work that our staff did to replace that flare, which doesn't seem like it should be that hard, but it is really hard.
Good morning, President Gardner, member of the board. So we're here to talk about the Western Water Reclamation Facility flare replacement. So as you might recall, back in August of 22, we were before you at the EOWR and had made a request for about $250,000 to replace the flare out at the Wharf Treatment Plant. I want to give some background. What is a flare? And a flare is a device that allows us to burn methane gas to the atmosphere. So you might go, well, why is there methane gas at a wastewater treatment plant? So let's step back one more process and understand that Wharf has what we call an anaerobic digester. And one of the byproducts of anaerobic digestion is methane gas, which we know is flammable. Obviously, we can burn it in the flare. We try and utilize it first beneficially in running equipment at the treatment plant, basically overgrown water heaters, if you will. This anaerobic digestion process likes to be about 98 degrees. However, if we don't need any heat to the digesters, what do we do with this excess methane? So it's burn it through a flare. And in this photo, you can see the flare off to the right-hand side. From the outside, the flare looked fine. It's a steel tube, right? And there's a flame inside of it, and exhausts come out the top of it. But looking inside, it's a completely different picture. That steel pipe was lined with ceramic K-wool, a fireproof material, heat-resistant. And over the number of years that the flare has been in use, it's become dry and brittle, and you can see it was basically cracking and peeling off the walls. Ultimately, gravity takes over, and those chunks would fall down, and they would block the burner that's in the bottom of the flare, block sensors that tell us is the flare working properly, as well as exposing other electrical items, thermocouples that understand the temperature within the flare would be exposed to higher heat and unprotected, and they were failing prematurely. So, long story short, we had to do something. So, staff reached out to Cimarron, who was the original manufacturer of the flare, and asked for a direct replacement of the original based on the drawings that we had. And that was really important because the flare is managed through permitting with Air Quality Management District, AQMD, and so we didn't want to get into permit issues, and so we bought this direct replacement, basically a exhaust pipe, if you will. So the order was placed, the stack arrived on April 20th, 23, and staff began preparing for its installation. I think as it came to the site, reality set in and staff started to get nervous, right? This isn't something that we traditionally do on a daily basis. They see this big pipe and flames inside, and oh my goodness, electrical components you can see running up the side of the unit, and so there was a bit of apprehension. And ultimately, we have to do something with the methane gas while we're changing out this flare. So when we started this process, we started looking into portable flares that we could rent and maybe bring on site, and they were quite expensive, to the tune of about $10,000 a day. And the original guess was that it was going to take 7 to 10 days to replace this stack. And so you look at that and you go, man, that's $70,000 to $100,000 just to burn this methane for this duration. And anyhow, long story short, operations kind of pulled together and kind of refocused, and we brought this project back into focus that says, hey, really, no, we're talking about disconnecting electrical wires. We do that every day. It's unbolting pipe fittings and other appurtenances. We do that every day. So let's not let this get bigger than it really is. So team started working, getting the new replacement kind of prepped while it was on the ground. We pre-ran all the electrical that we could. We dismantled whatever we could take off the existing while it was still in operations. The wastewater team kind of formulated a plan that said, hey, wait, methane creation in the anaerobic digester is directly related to feeding the digester. So maybe we could kind of hold solids back in the treatment processes, not feed the digesters, and therefore we wouldn't have methane to burn for a couple days. And ultimately we settled on, hey, we probably need 2 days to replace this unit. So the wastewater team made their changes. We stopped creating methane gas, and whatever was there or was, created was burned in the boilers to make the heat. And so staff started this project, and on a Monday morning we rolled in, we turned everything off, we started unbolting everything, and you can see the crane in the picture. We pulled the flare up off of its pedestal, grabbed the new one, stood it up in place, bolted everything on it, and actually by the end of the day, probably long day, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we were back in operation. So huge success. We were able to save a considerable sum of money. You can see in the slide. We spent about $132,000. We didn't have to rent the temporary unit, which was a great deal. We didn't want to deal with that. Ultimately, the flare that we took down will be sent back to the manufacturer, and that wool lining will be pulled off and redone, and will come back to us and be a shelf spare, because we know there's probably a 10 to 12-year life expectancy. So we'll be prepared for the next time. We've been through this. We kind of know what to expect. So anyhow, I think it's a great story. The fact that we're ultimately probably going to be $100,000 under our projected budget that we had asked for is a good accomplishment. And it really is, the mechanical services team, the electrical services team, the wastewater team, construction, everybody kind of coming together and understanding what needed to be done, not letting the moment get bigger than it really was, and pulling off a great project. So happy to answer any questions they might have.
Just real quickly, did you also finish ahead of schedule, I think?
Well, certainly the fact that we completed it in a day, right?
Yeah.
We initially thought a 7 to 10 day window would be needed, so.
So, under budget, ahead of schedule, no lost time accidents, pretty much a
went-
perfect project.
There it is,
Congratulations.
right?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Which is truly the test and the stance and the demonstration of the elite workforce that we have here at Western. So
Yes.
congratulations to your team.
Thank you.
You guys did an outstanding job. This was phenomenal. When we saw it, I knew it couldn't just be shared with just engineering committee. I knew this had to be brought out and put out for public view for our customers to understand the great lengths that you guys go to take care of them, to handle business, and to make sure that we're saving money and time on the schedule as best we can. We're looking for those opportunities, and this was an absolutely fantastic demonstration of it. I just wish you guys would have done a time-lapse photography on it.
We'll get better. We'll get better. On the
Next
screen
time.
is a photo of the team that was involved, so I do want to make sure that they receive the
No.
credit that they deserve.
Great job.
Hey.
Thank you.
Does that conclude General Manager's report?
That does, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to Director's reports. SAPA did not meet yesterday. They were scheduled to, but canceled. Metropolitan?
Metropolitan, a lot of stuff going on. We did have a special board meeting, however, I can't discuss most of it because it was due to the department, the direct reports, evaluations and performances, and those were all held in closed session. However, after the conclusion of that, compensation was awarded to each of the department heads, with the exclusion of the audit, the person who was just hired for audits and the general auditor for the district. And it's going to be brought back that he be given a COLA because it was an oversight, I guess, in the process, that he can't actually even get COLA if it's not awarded directly by the board. So that's going to be coming back as an item for him to be able to get the COLA. But the merit increases were the 3% for the COLA for the cost of living, and then a 5% merit increase across the board to the ethics officer, the general manager, and general counsel. And one of the things I wish we would have done was probably award general counsel a little bit higher in a percentage, although we wanted to be equitable across the board. But something that general counsel did with defending litigation with San Diego County Water Authority was the fact that they, at general counsel's office, saved a significant amount of money that could have resulted in the B range for Metropolitan in the long haul. So that, I think, should have been awarded in a very different way. So we'll have continuing conversations about that. But other than that, that was the conclusion of the special board meeting. I'll be having our regular committee and board meeting days next week.
Great, thank you. Chino Basin Water Master did meet the last Thursday of the month. Two significant items. They are required to do a recharge master plan update for, I believe it's every 5 years. There was one due this year. They did adopt it and ordered that it be filed with the court, which is a requirement of the judgment. And then there are a series of board-requested recharge project analyses looking at additional potential recharge facilities in Chino Basin. The goal of this is to have them grant-ready so that we can be like Melissa and try to find some money. And no.
If that's where you're going.
No.
Okay.
I mean, they would love it, but I'd rather she concentrated on us. So that is moving forward. There was some direction given to staff on kind of priority for some of them. There is not unanimity amongst all of the water master parties as to which projects ought to move forward and in what order, but there's not unanimity among the water master participants in many things, so not really a surprise. And the other action they took was Metropolitan had asked for approval to increase the annual delivery of water to be stored in the dry year yield program from 25,000 acre feet a year, which is kind of a long-standing number that's been thoroughly analyzed and maintains things in the basin correctly, to 50,000 acre feet for this year because they've got a bunch of extra water and they're looking for somewhere to park it. After an analysis, it was determined that that would not result in any material harm to the basin, and the board did approve bumping the delivery limit from 25,000 acre feet a year to 50,000 for this year and next year. And they actually did the same thing back in 2017, another very wet year. So that was the actions that Watermaster took. CDA. Okay. Where's my right page? Here we go. RCRA.
We had a meeting after a couple of months, so last Thursday. It was a rather long meeting. We had a few agenda items. We adopted a resolution updating authorized staffs that can approve the financial transactions. So we added a controller so he be able to make that. We adopted a resolution to update the authority's investment policy. They talked about, being able to invest in different actions, so that was approved. There was amendment in the professional service contract with Albert Webb because of the construction costs and what's going on, so we approved an extra $24,000 in the budget, which went from $455,383 to $479,433. We approved a professional services contract to Lee and Rowe in the amount of $384 for a design for an emergency bypass pump at the RCRA facility. Actually, it was at RCRA's South Regional Pump Station. It's a part of that project. And item E, which was a very lengthy discussion we had, was about awarding a construction contract in the amount of $869,500 to Mike Burledge for RCRA Temescal siphon improvements. That siphon has been, there was a lot of corrosion, and it was a part of the CIP project, but it moved ahead just because it needs a lot of work. And couple of agencies were, couple of agencies were not sure if, we got a couple of project bids, and 869 was from Mike Perlich, was the best, but Corona and Norco were not sure if they thought it was too early for them to go and get that budget approved, so they were not sure of how this came about, and they want to have discussion. Everyone approved this project budget, but they want to have a conversation later on how these projects are going to move forward and how are they going to be bringing it to the board. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll give a little additional context. It was a long discussion that we have at joint powers authorities all the time, and that some entities who are part of the collective are investing in a repair in part of a facility that maybe they don't directly participate in. And so it's a discussion about, do we invest as a collective for RCRA's overall treatment plan and collection system, or do we only pay for that which benefits our own agency? And so that's a very difficult discussion, especially with directors that are rather new to the Joint Powers Authority, don't know this collective need for investment. And so there was a lot of education that was going on, because the RCRA board is a fairly young, inexperienced board at RCRA. So there was a lot of background information, and the two cities just want a little bit more time to think about it, and we're going to bring back some more information to them. So, but they were very clear that they didn't want to pass up this bid, because the bid was important and it was a good bid, and so the project is going to move forward, but we're going to have an ongoing discussion about how to share
Who
the
pays
costs.
for, yeah.
It was very complicated.
It was
Director
a
Risby is
long
doing
meeting,
a
yeah.
good job trying to in a very political way, say that we're going to continue to work on it.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
All righty.
WRCOG.
WRCOG, actually, this is one of the shortest meetings that I've had to go to in recent memory, and despite our nearly 300-page agenda. So we were out of there in under an hour. And a lot of it had to do with stuff that really doesn't involve us. So there was a contract for professional services for the streetlight program, which we don't participate in. And then TUMF always is an item that we come up, and Western doesn't participate in the TUMF. And then there was no SAPA OWOW update because the meeting was canceled for this month. So pretty easy peasy meeting.
Excellent. Sarah?
Oh,
What are you looking at me for?
yeah, it was canceled, so hopefully next month. I was like,
Is it Director Densted's fault that it was canceled?
she
Aqua.
always have the longest updates. I was listening to
She does.
Aqua?
Region 9?
Aqua, so we have our Region 9 board meeting is later this month. It's on the 20th, and I think we're having a time change till 2 o'clock. I think there was a conflict because of committee meetings that are being held up in Sacramento. So staff are kind of tied up with that, and they're expecting it to go a little bit longer, so they've bumped our meeting back a couple of hours. And then I attended last week, I did go up to Sacramento area to go to the liability committee for the JPIA for all of the insurance and what the pool was going to do. And we adopted a 10% increase to the rate of deposit for premium, which will result in a $961,000 return of funds to members versus going with the no change of pricing, which would result in a $2.6 million of additional funds assessed to members. So there has obviously been a change in the market because of market conditions and some things that have been going on, and there have been a couple of big instances that have happened, so we're trying to make sure that we maintain steady and level, which is what all of our finance teams all like to hear, and when we're assessing that for our benefits pool. So that is all I have to report on that.
Was there an election, a result that you'd like to mention?
There was an election result, and yes, all of the regions, I did have that, I'll have to pull it up on my thing, but yes, I was part of the re-elected panel, so I will commence with a start of another 2-year term on Region 9's board, starting in January of next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Did they go with the slate?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
We did not. Our vote was modified a bit, but
Yes,
we did
and
not prevail.
And I'm sure I will get the actual numbers from all of the voting at our meeting, and happy to send out the results, because I have those that were emailed to me, so I'm happy to, I'll forward them to Tammy, and she can send them out.
Great.
Okay? Sure.
General Director's comments? Director Densted?
Sure. So, a couple of things. I went to the State of the City for Wildemar this last week, and they've got a lot of stuff, a lot of development that's happening down there, and, you know, Elsinore is going to really be tasked with providing some services and things, so I'm sure it'll come up in our side-by-side when we're having conversations with them, but they've got a lot of development, a lot of things. They're really moving a lot of shovels down there, so a lot of different and larger projects than what they've had in the past. Some retail space, some hotel space, some different things. So I'm sure that's going to be a discussion that's going to come to us at some point of they're having to change their need for delivery of services. So, and increase in water sales. So we'll see how that all pans out, but just kind of put that on everybody's radar. I also attended on our behalf the Marietta Wildemar Chamber Gala. We were nominated for the Large Business of the Year, and unfortunately, we were not a winner, but we represented, and I want to thank staff for putting forward the package that documented all of the good things that we've done, and it doesn't discourage me, and hopefully we'll get a nomination next year, and we'll do it. So appreciate that. And I also attended in recognition of breast cancer awareness and all of the people that have touched my lives that have been struck with this horrible, horrible cancer. I went and attended Marietta outside of their city hall in the Town Square Park, formed with Michelle's Place, which is the cancer facility down there to help cancer victims and patients and provide services to them. We formed a live pink ribbon and took photos of that on Saturday. So I was honored to be able to go and attend that. And that is all I have.
Great. Director Rizvi.
Yes. RICRA is having their community tour for their facility on Saturday, October 7th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Anybody is interested? The first time I went, I was just like fascinated by it. So I know it's a wastewater tour plan, but it is very interesting. Anybody who's interested, the information is on our website. It was on social media, and it's on RICRA's facility. If anybody has any question, they can reach out to me as well. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Director Torres.
Yeah, I have a few. Last week, I attended the Harupa Valley State of the City, which was, just very interesting. Harupa Valley is such a interesting city and the way it's growing, so I was happy to be there. Last night, I attended National Night Out, which was just a lot more fun. In my division, we've always just had the Woodcrest one, but this year there was one in Eastside, so I attended both, and both were just great events. Got to participate in the raffle pulling in Eastside, and of course, Woodcrest is a large event. Last time I talked about Casablanca Home and Neighborly Services getting a new playground that started yesterday. There will be a ribbon cutting tomorrow, so if you want to go see what Kaboom and CarMax can do when they invest in the Inland Empire, that is a good opportunity. Also want to acknowledge Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and also the people that we've lost and also had a chance to watch survive. How important this is. I hope everyone's supporting in their own way. And then I do want to just give, just a morning thought of our late Senator Dianne Feinstein, who paved the way for many of us to be sitting here today in her own right. And a congratulations to our newest Senator, LaFonza Butler.
Director Roten.
I think really the only thing I had to add to all of these great comments, I was able to go to the College and Career Fair at the Galleria, and I think back when I was appointed in August of 21, it was one of the first things that I got to go to, and it's so uplifting, and to see we had 2 tables this year, not just one, to see all of our water professionals there sharing their enthusiasm and passion for what they do with all of the folks, kids and parents walking by. It's just wonderful to see it. And we're well represented, and I think that of the booths that I saw, which were most of them, I think we were the only one that had so many multiple people there, sharing about their different jobs and things. In fact, I think when I got there, I even heard that a few people had left because we had so many. So that's encouraging to know that our employees love their jobs that much that they want to share that with this upcoming generation especially. So thank you all for being there, and thank you to the Riverside Chamber for putting that on every year. It's really I think it's very profitable. I was encouraged seeing, some students were just there on their own, but some were definitely there with their parents, and it was kind of cool to see them walking up, and maybe the student is up at the booth and the parents just kind of hanging back listening, but a lot of great information there. So just wanted to mention that, and thank you, Director, for attending the Harupa Valley State of the City. I appreciate that. I was not in town for those, so I'm glad that we were represented there, so thank you.
That's it.
Okay, only thing that I have to add is I also went to a National Night Out event last night. It's getting to be a bigger event than it was pre-COVID, at least in much of Riverside. Riverside had 20 odd of them scattered around the city. And I went to just one that was nearby, and it was a lot of fun. Let's see, requests for future agenda items. Anybody have anything?
I do. Actually, again, I have a just question, but I wanted to know if maybe we can have a presentation or an informational, information session on what would happen if there is a shutdown on November 17th. And if we have any projects or bills. Government, the federal shutdown.
Federal.
Will that affect any, I don't know if any of if we have anything in those bills that keep holding it up. If not, then don't worry about it, but that was my question.
Sorry, it won't affect any of our operations.
No, I know that.
One thing, you know, it could affect, you know, our work in trying to secure funding,
And that was my question,
but
sorry.
other than that, really nothing.
And it really depends a lot on how long a shutdown might be. A short one has little impact, a long one has more.
There's a few bills that are holding this up, right? So that's, I don't know
Well,
if
and
any of our,
there's
if we have
not
anything
a
tied
Speaker
up
of the
in
House, which makes it a little challenging to do
Yeah,
anything.
it's fun.
So, okay. We do have information items in the packet. If anybody has questions on them, see authors. Our next meeting is Wednesday, October 18th at 9:30. We have no closed session, so we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.